Hi, welcome to the small shed. This week we're cutting it really fine for a Saturday video. I'll see you in a minute. Now, I wasn't going to do a video today. I said the other week that I was going to do as and when, and I hadn't got anything that I was really happy with putting out today. But I've just had a delivery. So let's have a look. What's the time? Alexa, what's the time? Alexa, what's the time?
The time is 2:17 p.m.
Alexa, what's the date?
Today is Saturday the 21st of January.
Right. So let's see how long it'll take me to get this package unwrapped, have a look at it and fitted, and get a video up. See if we can get anything done today. We've been having a problem. It started over a year ago with the central heating, and it started playing up a bit just after it had been serviced, and I got to the bottom of it in the end, and it was the pump. We've got a pump on the condense side of the boiler that pumps the water away because the boiler is not somewhere near a drain. And this pump unfortunately had a cutout on it which killed the power to the boiler if it didn't work properly. And some of it was down to the way it had been mounted when it was fitted, and when the guy had come and serviced the boiler, it hadn't gone back together quite the same way. So I sorted that. He came again last November and did the boiler service, and that was fine. And then about a month after he'd gone, it started tripping out, and of course it happened to be one of the first times that we had absolutely minus whatever it was, 8 degrees temperature. You wake up one morning and there's no heating on, and then it spends the rest of the day trying to get it working up to temperature. Simple enough thing to sort, but it's a pain in the rear. And I've had about a week now. I wasn't going to bother doing a video with it because it was just keep trying different things and bending switches, levers and things. But I've come to the conclusion that I wasn't going to be able to get it done. I'd failed. And much to my surprise, when I went online to find out, I was going to get a new limit switch. But when I went online, I found that the new pump was there was one for £55 or a make me an offer type thing. But none of them were much more than about £60 or £70. So I offered the guy 50 quid, brand new, in its box, and it's come within 2 days. Really, it's a simple enough task of fitting this. It's a small wiring job, which I assumed it was the wiring in there I'd have to change, but actually it's the wiring into the control box, which I'll have to replicate and sort out. But that in itself shouldn't be a massive problem, particularly as the heating is working okay at the moment, and therefore the house is warm. It won't take too long to get it swapped. But essentially all it is, it takes the water that comes condensing out of the boiler pipe and it drops it into a big tank under here. There's a tank in here that holds about 2 litres of water, I suppose. And just getting close, you can have a look at it. So this is the actual machine itself. There's, as I say, a tank underneath it, and as that fills up with water, this at the back starts to lift, and when it gets up to a point up here somewhere, it flicks this little limit switch, which switches the pump on. That pumps all the water out of this pipe up across the garage into the soil stack down the other end of the garage, and then the water level falls and it switches off. So far so good, great. The problem comes if, as this one seems to be doing, it seems to be sticking halfway up. Now, when it first was a problem, it was because the way it was hung on the wall wasn't quite right and it was at an angle. But there's certainly nothing like that as a problem now, and I've spent hours frigging around with these little limit switches and not got anywhere. But the problem is, if it goes quite full but it wedges itself solid, this front switch starts to lift as a secondary, and when that gets up to a point there, it switches all the power off, and that kills the power to the boiler as well. And then of course you've got no heating. And what was happening, this all happened just after I'd fitted a new thermostat, and there was me chasing the thermostat problem, and all it was that every time I was going into the garage and slamming the door or anything, it would knock this and it would drop down, and the heating would reset itself, and I didn't realise what the problem was until a couple of months into the fault finding, if you like. I'd swapped the thermostat back to the original and all sorts before I found out what the problem was. So it's not a big problem. I've got to go and swap 5 wires effectively and hang this on the wall and connect this to the to the pipe that's already in there. I'm not sure how that comes out. It looks like it might come out with a spanner, in which case, let's just have a quick go. It would be easier for me to just swap the actual thing itself. It looks like it's got like a bayonet fitting. Yes, so all I need to do now is do the same with the original, and then I can just plug that back in. So it really shouldn't take me long at all. We're going to turn the power off to the boiler and see what we can find. And here's the problem end, exactly the same thing, but as you can see, I've been bending that. I've even bent that. I've had things glued on it. I've been bending it so that it triggers sooner than later, but I really just can't see the problem unless it is just that switch. But it's not really worth messing around now. I've got the little cover there to take off to change the 5 wires, and as you can see, I'll just demonstrate what happens with it. When that goes up, switches the pump, that pumps the tank dry, and then it goes down when it's finished. And as I say, the problem has been that if that fills up too full and that doesn't lift, that kills the boiler, power and everything. Back on again. So that's where the problem has been. First of all, we'll just take this, we'll switch the thing off altogether first, kill the power, take off this condense pipe, which is getting a bit poorly, but it's got a rubber top on it, like a silicone top. As you can see, we've been throwing an awful lot of water around in the last few weeks, so I've got towels at the ready. And that I now need to get a spanner on like I did before, and we can take that out. Just gonna... Oh, it doesn't. There's a... Oh, right, very clever. There's a one-way valve on that, obviously. I expected it would pour out water. Right. Next is to get that cover off. We'll get this little screwdriver, electrical one, and get the cover off. So it has been isolated. And what I can also do is just pull the fuse on the spare as well. So all we've got to do is make sure we don't get any of these wires wrong that are coming in. So what I think I'm going to do now is to go and get the other pump and bring it in, because there's a long wire on it, and I can actually just do them one wire at a time so that we know it's a straight one for one swap. So we've got a 3-core mains cable and what I think is the signal cable that goes back to the that one sends power back to the boiler, I think. So I'm assuming anyway, but we will have a look. So it is a straight exact swap. So I'm going to start with the, yeah, it's a good job you check these things, because you've got a neutral and a live together into one terminal there, which is a bit weird. But so we will start with the neutral out of this, which is in the second terminal. Right, so that's got the new pump connectors in. The old ones are now disconnected. At no time did I ever have any more than one terminal open, so hopefully we haven't got anything wrong. We'll just put the cover back on and then take the old pump out, see where we go from there. That should now just lift off, which it does. And we'll have to loosen the wiring clip, goes in the back. There we go. Now I'm not going to shorten the wires on the other pump until I know everything's okay, but I might come back and revisit that once I'm happy it's working. I can come back and double check. There we go. That's better. Now it makes sense. Yeah, got my doubts about the float on the other one. I'm wondering whether or not it's got some water in it, so it isn't actually floating as much. But we'll see when we give it an autopsy in a minute or two. That's more like it. I recognise it now. So that's back on its mounts. We'll put that back into its hole. Spanner it up. That's it. We'll put the condense pipe back. I can remember where I put it. Right, so apart from tidying wiring, it should now be in for a working pump. So we will push the fuse back in, switch it back on, and behold, the boiler's lit up. Great. So the only way I can really test it in the long term is to see how it performs, but I will just use my milk bottle to double check, and you can see how it works then. Beautiful. Right, so I'll come back to that in a day or two and tidy the wiring and put the cover back on once I know it's working properly. In the meantime, I'm going to take that out into the shed and do a bit of an autopsy on it. And while we're in the garage, might as well have a quick update on the Cyclekart for anybody that's following that one. Front end is pretty much all sorted now, ready for trying it out. You can see there's grease around the steering and everything where it's all been put back together properly, ready for a running front end, if you like. Steering's all in and working. Bodywork's pretty much finished at the right the way to the cockpit. Back, I'm just working out tail. I've got to bolt the engine down, but all the mounting and that's sorted on that. So it just needs a disc brake connecting up and an accelerator connecting up. Bit of work on the wheels to connect them to the axles properly. But in real time, as I say, anybody that's following the Cyclekart diaries, they're about May, I think, at the moment, this last year. So this is now real time. It's probably about 2 or 3 weeks off running, and possibly even at that stage moving as well, so we're getting on quite well with that as well. Right, so we're back in the shed. It's 3:15, so we've done reasonably well. We've done it in under an hour. I just want to try and take the float off this switch just to see if it's one of two things that was going wrong. It was either the switch on the top, which I couldn't see being a problem, or the actual float mechanism itself. And now that I've got it to a stage where I can get the float out, I hope, I want to have a look and see. I've got a sneaking suspicion that if it had got water in it, that made it heavier and it wouldn't float so easily, and that might have been why I was having the trouble with it. But struggling to get this top off at the moment, and I'm just resorting to a bit of butchery and got it out with the knife. Yeah, that's what it is. You hear that? Full of water. I thought there was a problem, that's why it wasn't floating very well. God knows how it's got in there, because it does look to be a sealed container. But at least it's nice to know you're not going mad when you keep adjusting a switch and it's not doing what it should do. Alexa, what's the time, please?
The time is 3:28 p.m.
So there we are. It's been probably less than an hour and I've resolved a problem that's been haunting me since well before Christmas. This started playing up before Christmas, and while we were away for a fortnight, with the temperatures dropping all the while, I actually put a plastic dustbin underneath that and took the pump out altogether so that it just half filled it with water while we were away, because I didn't want the heating to go off and find the house was frozen when we got back home. So it's been a long ongoing saga, this one, and it's comforting. I'm chuffed to bits that I've actually found that. The fact that the float is half full of water is, it sort of validates everything you've been trying to do, that you've been stumped on all the way along. The switches were fairly straightforward on-offs. It's a fairly binary thing, you know, it either works or it doesn't, and yet it was so random. But it was the reluctance of this float to come up, because it was a lot heavier than it should have been, that's been the problem. So we've got some, for our £50, that's probably saved, you know, another 150 for somebody to, if I'd have got it done by a professional. He'd have gone out and bought a new pump like I did, but he'd have bought it from a dealer rather than someone who'd got it as old stock or something. By the time I'm finished, I'm sure I wouldn't have had much change out of £250. So we've saved a bit of money. We've got a few bits and pieces like piping and switches and things that we may or may not do something with in the future, but at least we've solved the problems, put it all back together, and I can move on. And it's all been done, as I say, in around about an hour's time, so not such a bad result in the end. Hope the video was of interest. Look forward to seeing you next time. See you then. Bye.